Hey guys, welcome back to CLOWNFISH TV. This is Kneon. We're going to talk about the fall of Star Wars. The fall of Star Wars box office this weekend, the Rise of Skywalker, did not perform as well as people had hoped, as Disney had hoped. Definitely now, I want to say that it didn't bomb. It definitely didn't bomb, but it did not meet the initial projections. And a lot of media outlets are calling that out now. They're calling it out. This is coming from Film School Rejects. Star Wars, the fall of the box office. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how it failed spectacularly in China. Now, again, a lot of people are like, well, Star Wars never does well in China. It always bombs in China. Yeah, but this was a bomb beyond a bomb. This was really, really bad. Really bad. And then we're going to talk about the Star Wars brand. How Star Wars is on the freaking decline. It has been ever since Disney took control of it. They were off to a great start, and the interest in Star Wars has waned. I never thought I'd see a day where Star Wars would be in the state that it is right now. Now, it's nowhere near where Terminator is, for sure, but it's nowhere near where it could be and should be. I mean, geez, even the prequels didn't kill off Star Wars. People came back for Clone Wars. They bought toys, they bought merchandise, and now it just seems like Disney in 5 years has basically taken, you know, what was at one point the biggest movie franchise in history and just crashed it, derailed it. I'm gobsmacked that there was no plan, and other people are calling out that there was no plan. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that because even some people who have been defending Star Wars for quite some time are now turning and saying, you know what, Disney never had a plan for this franchise. It's pretty obvious they didn't have a plan, right? I mean, anyone who's watched the last trilogy knows there's no freaking plan. So before we get into it, please give us a sub. Give us a sub. We're hoping for 100,000 subs soon. We're at about 85,000. You guys have been awesome. We should join the six-figure club, I'm guessing around February at the rate we're going, and we really appreciate it, guys. We do talk about more than Star Wars. We talk about pop culture news. We talk about the animation industry a lot. We talk about comic books. We have familiarity with both of those. We're talking a lot about Star Wars this month, obviously, because the Rise of Skywalker is the biggest story happening in the pop culture sphere right now, you know, for a variety of reasons. And some of them aren't good, right? So this coming from Film School Rejects, Star Wars, the fall of the box office. Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, disappointed with an opening weekend gross far below expectations. Again, that is not a bomb. We have never said that Star Wars would bomb, but it did come in about 50 to 75 million under what Disney was hoping for. That's not good. And this is entirely correct. This should have been another Endgame. The final installment of the Skywalker saga should have broken box office records. It should have been another Endgame. It should have been bigger than Endgame, but it hasn't been because there's been a declining interest in Star Wars under Disney's stewardship. When the original Star Wars opened in 77, the movie didn't set a new weekend high, but the 78 re-release did at that point in time. It propelled the feature to become the highest grossing film of all time. Yeah, a lot of people didn't know what it was in 77. It's still one of the biggest moneymakers ever when the amount is adjusted for inflation. 5 years later, the third installment of the original trilogy, Return of the Jedi, set a new domestic opening weekend record. I remember, I was very, very young, but I went to the theater to go see Return of the Jedi, and I remember the theaters being very full, even weeks after it premiered. I did not go opening weekend, I don't think, but I went with my cousin Doug. We went, and I was little, but I do remember the theater being packed. In 99, the franchise returned with The Phantom Menace, which had one of the best openings ever at that time by a long shot, and came very close to breaking the record held by Jurassic Park 2. 2002 and 2005, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith set new worldwide opening weekend records. They did. And actually, as much shade as people throw at the prequels, Revenge of the Sith is in my top 3 Star Wars movies. And yeah, the dialogue is McClunky, but I love the movie. I love the movie overall. I do. I actually find Revenge of the Sith, for me, it's an infinitely rewatchable movie, just because I love the Palpatine-Anakin dynamic. I loved Obi-Wan in that movie, and it was really cool to see how Darth Vader turned to the dark side. It had some really awesome battles. I mean, we had Yoda versus Palpatine in an actual fight. He didn't just stand there and shoot lightning at Yoda. They had an actual fight, and it was pretty badass. I love Revenge of the Sith. Star Wars The Force Awakens debuted in 2015, and the franchise reached more record-breaking figures in the US and globally, 248 million. 2 years ago, the next installment, The Last Jedi, came close with a second-placing domestic gross of 220. Now, The Rise of Skywalker failed to even crack the 200 million mark domestically. The finale's opening in the US and Canada, so that's US and Canada, North America, 175 million, is on par with the Beauty and the Beast remake. Let that sink in. The last Star Wars of the quote-unquote Skywalker saga made as much money as the Beauty and the Beast remake. Now, the Beauty and the Beast remake did make a lot of money, but it's mostly forgotten at this point. It's like, oh yeah, that was a thing Disney did 2 years ago, and they've had like 6 more live-action movies since then, live-action remakes. Here are some more movies that had better opening weekends than The Rise of Skywalker with inflation or actual ticket sales. And now a lot of these movies people have forgotten about. The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, made more money than Rise of Skywalker. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. Pirates of the Caribbean 2 made more money than The Rise of Skywalker. Spider-Man 3, Iron Man 3, The Dark Knight Rises, Incredibles 2, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Rather than looking at the grosses and explain the context of time and inflation, here's a breakdown of the series plus other Star Wars theatrical features by estimated opening weekend attendance numbers. So they go into the numbers here. But this is what's concerning. We see that Star Wars is on the decline, and it's not Star Wars fatigue. It's shitty Star Wars fatigue. The sequel trilogy is the only one of the Star Wars trilogies to go down. So usually how it goes with the Star Wars trilogy, right? This is usually how it goes. Usually the first and the third installments perform the best. And this is what I know Forbes was predicting, that The Rise of Skywalker was going to be on par with The Force Awakens originally, because if you look at the way that the trilogies went, we had Star Wars and Return of the Jedi were the top 2 grossing. Empire did less. Same with the prequel trilogy. Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith were the first 2, in terms of box office, and then Attack of the Clones was the weakest. So this is the only Star Wars trilogy where we have seen every movie do less and less and less money. Not counting Solo, not counting Rogue One. Actually, if you want to, we're talking the trilogy. Now, if you're talking Rogue One and Solo, I would consider that part of the Star Wars story series, and you saw a massive drop-off from Rogue One to Solo. Massive drop-off. So the opening for Episode 9 of the Skywalker saga definitely fell below expectations. Back in October, Box Office Pro said 185 to 225 million with a central prediction of 200. Still below the other 2 in the trilogy, but hopeful. Last week, following disappointing buzz and reviews, the site lowered the forecast of 160 to 190 million, which is what we were talking about, with a central prediction of 183 million. Following Thursday night previews, other experts guessed at least 195 million. We had people jumping into the comments on our videos the other day going like, it made 195 million. It made 195 million. No, it didn't. It made 175 million. And you know what? After today, it might be adjusted down even more, because I don't think they have all the auditing done yet. It's not surprising, of course, given the negative buzz and critical reception. Reviews for The Rise of Skywalker have been scathing, giving the live action side of the franchise its worst Rotten Tomatoes Metacritic score since The Phantom Menace. It's bad. It's actually got a worse score than Attack of the Clones, which personally I feel Attack of the Clones is the worst of the prequels, mostly due to Anakin and Padme's dialogue and just a lot of nothing happening other than, the beginning, which was good, with the whole chase setup, and then we've got the end of the movie, of course, with Geonosis, which is one of my favorite sequences in all of Star Wars. But you have to dig through all the politics to get there, and I actually found Attack of the Clones, for me personally, to be the least rewatchable of the prequels. But this movie is worse. A lot of people say this movie is worse than Attack of the Clones. This isn't just another matter of critics versus fans. Moviegoers also showed signs of disappointment by not giving the movie a B+. Even Solo received better marks. Yeah, I would watch Solo again. Now, disclaimer, I have not seen The Rise of Skywalker yet. We actually did not go opening weekend. That is the first time in over 20 years we have not gone to a Star Wars movie opening weekend. Usually we go on preview night. It's been a tradition. There have only been a couple times where we didn't go preview night. I think Revenge of the Sith, we had to wait until we could find a babysitter because Squid King was very young. But most of the time we go preview night to Star Wars, and we skipped it entirely this weekend. We even went to Solo. We went to freaking Solo, and people jumped us for that. We went to Solo, and people jumped us for going to see Solo and actually giving a fair review that was okay, you know. But I've actually watched Solo 2 or 3 times. I will watch Solo again. I will never watch The Last Jedi again. I have no desire to ever see that movie again. I skipped The Rise of Skywalker because of it. While the buzz may temper after more people respond to the negative reactions with a shrug of "it's not that bad," The Rise of Skywalker continues to draw criticism based on further developments about its narrative faults. Revelations have come about in the press over details that were only found in books, video games, and director Q&As. Yeah, that pisses me off that Disney does this. I mean, George Lucas did it to an extent where he filled in some of the blanks with books. You know, and of course, you know, the Clone Wars TV series and all of that, but I never felt watching the prequels that I didn't have enough information to enjoy the movie, where with Disney Star Wars, you know, I still don't even know what the hell the First Order is. I don't know what the First Order is or where they came from. Yeah, it might be in one of the books, it might be in one of the comic books, it might be in a game. I don't give a shit. I need to see an explanation on screen. Because if you're going to explain why there's stormtroopers and TIE fighters and X-Wings and all that stuff 30 years after the Empire collapsed, you better freaking explain it on screen. So they said that there was a lot of backlash. They said it's not as bad as Cats updating the effects through the weekend. Yeah, we talked about that. They freaking patched Cats. They patched Cats. There's a video we did yesterday where they actually released a patch to Cats to fix some of the flaws in the special effects to try to save this movie. So they're talking about China, and we're going to talk about China. China doesn't give a shit about Star Wars, less than a shit. China doesn't even give a fart. They don't even give a fart about Star Wars. So 2 years later, so it actually opened. The Force Awakens opened and broke a Saturday record in China. 2 years later, The Last Jedi opened even lower in China and fell tremendously after that. 92% drop in its second weekend. I think The Rise of Skywalker is going to drop off a freaking cliff this weekend, because now the word of mouth is out there. Now that everybody's talking about how bad the movie actually is, and people are like, don't even waste your money on it. That it doesn't make anybody happy. It doesn't make fans of the original trilogy happy, and it doesn't make fans of The Last Jedi happy. That nobody's happy with this movie. I think it's going to drop off a cliff. Rise of Skywalker's performing worse. Rian Johnson's, get this, how bad is it? The Rise of Skywalker is performing even worse. Rian Johnson's Knives Out had a better opening in China. Let that sink in. Knives Out made more money opening weekend in China than the freaking Rise of Skywalker. What the hell? So fortunately for Disney and Lucasfilm, this isn't the end of the world. Star Wars series The Mandalorian continues to be a pop culture phenom right now. Even if it's hardly the most watched thing on Disney Plus. Even if it's hardly the most watched thing on Disney Plus. I think the most watched thing on Disney Plus, if I'm not mistaken, is The Simpsons. I think that's actually why people are subscribing to Disney Plus, and they couldn't even get that right. They botched the aspect ratio. People are upset about some of the episodes not being available, like the Michael Jackson episode, etc. But there is a theory that after The Mandalorian, which we've enjoyed, and I will be very clear on that, we don't hate everything Star Wars. I actually freaking love The Mandalorian. I had to give it a second chance because I did not like the first episode. I thought it had too much Marvel humor in it. But we've been watching the hell out of The Mandalorian. I love it. I love it. This is what I wanted. But it's too little too late for the sequel trilogy. And I think Star Wars as a brand is damaged. I think Star Wars has been relegated to Star Trek territory, where it's not really worthy of the big screen anymore. Just make TV shows of varying quality. That's where Star Wars belongs at this point. And that's really sad. But it's not just YouTubers. It's not just armchair pundits that are talking about it. I mean, we've got the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes Fox Business, all using words like just and fails and disappointment. We did a video yesterday talking about the disappointment of Star Wars. This isn't just YouTubers putting a negative spin on things, right? The outlets that have defended Star Wars for years, Disney Star Wars for years, are baffled at how far the IP has fallen under Disney control. Let's talk about China. Let's talk about how bad it did in China. Now, again, Star Wars never does great in China, but this is an all-time low. I mean, when Knives Out makes more money, that's an all-time low. The franchise appears to be in terminal decline in China. They're banking on China. Disney's actually trying to create a new Chinese audience for Star Wars by releasing ebooks and all this stuff, and nobody gives a shit. They don't care. They don't care. So it said J.J. Abrams' latest episode earning considerably less than many much smaller recent releases, including, ironically, Rian Johnson's Knives Out. Knives Out made more money. Knives Out made more money in China than Star Wars, the last Star Wars of the Skywalker saga. What the hell? So it sputtered back to Earth moments after making liftoff in the massive Chinese market over the weekend, opening to a dismal 12 million, including previews. It was knocked out cold by Donnie Yen's martial arts epic, Ip Man 4, the finale. Now, they need to do more Star Wars movies with Donnie Yen, I guess, is what they need to do, because it worked for Rogue One, right? It brought in 46 million. So not including its lavish preview screenings on Wednesday and Thursday of last week, Rise of Skywalker earned just 8.9 million from Friday to Sunday, which was less than yet another Chinese release. Only Cloud knows. Skywalker's woeful opening continues a downward spiral for Star Wars earnings in the Middle Kingdom. Abrams' The Force Awakens totaled 124 million. So we went from 124 million to 12 million. Okay? That's like a tenth. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. It's down 90%. That's insane. It was already considered disappointing. $124 million was considered disappointing for the Chinese market for a Star Wars movie. Oh my God, look at Hold My Green Milk, right? This is nothing. Rogue One did 69 million because it had Donnie Yen in it. I think that's why it did so well. Plus it was a standalone story. Even if you had never seen the original Star Wars, you could still enjoy Rogue One for what it was. The Last Jedi eroded to 42 million, but hey, whatever. Solo, which I think they reworked it to Ranger Solo, so it didn't have that Star Wars taint. It didn't have the taint of Star Wars. They called it Ranger Solo. 16.4 million, and now this one, 12 million. Nobody cares. Local analysts believe Rise of Skywalker will struggle to crack even 20 million. Either way, its performance is unlikely to make it into China's top 50 releases. It made less money than Knives Out and X-Men Dark Phoenix. It made less money than Dark Phoenix in China. That's crazy. A large part of the Star Wars franchise's struggles in China stem from the fact the original 3 films never received a wide release in the country. Bullshit. Bullshit. They easily could fix this. And when you have the standalone stories not making that much money either, you know what I'm saying? I don't think that has anything to do with it. Look, I can understand for the Force Awakens, I can understand it didn't do as well, but you would think if people had legitimate interest in The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi, they would go back and watch the other movies. They just don't like these movies. They just don't like them. Sorry, China's a bust. Nobody wants Star Wars in China. I did an article a few months ago on our blog out at DRes talking about the damaged franchise that is Star Wars. Now, this is funny because I put this story out there and Google buried it after a week or so. It got a lot of hits. We had hundreds of thousands of views on this thing. And I kind of broke down the decline of Star Wars, even the merchandise, even the theme park. The theme parks, how Galaxy's Edge was a flop. You're not going to see Galaxy's Edge in Shanghai Disneyland, are you? You're not going to see that in Shanghai. But I broke down how Star Wars has declined, and it was one of the top results for Star Wars in Google News, and all of a sudden it got marked opinion. I have to wonder if somebody at Disney didn't complain to Google and tell them to mark it as opinion, because we were getting a lot of views on this article. But yeah, I mean, look, it's not just the movies. It's the toys. The merchandise doesn't sell. Hasbro. Hasbro doesn't even, I don't even know if they're going to keep Star Wars, because now we got Mattel making Baby Yoda dolls. I think Hasbro's making stuff too, but you did not see the big push for Star Wars this year. They released some merchandise kind of low key, a couple of kiosks. The Star Wars section is all but non-existent at Walmart, and even through the prequels. That's what I'm telling you. Like, how far has Disney ground Star Wars down? Even during the prequels, even during the Clone Wars, even years after the Clone Wars, there was always a healthy assortment of Star Wars merchandise that sold. And now you can't give Star Wars away. You can't give it away. Even the original trilogy stuff. Like, people are tired. They don't want it. They don't want it. You know? How long did Rose Tico sit in the bargain bin for 50 cents? Nobody wants her. Hasbro took a beating. They took a beating and they threw Star Wars under the bus. Galaxy's Edge, when it opened initially, was a flop. I mean, they do have Rise of the Resistance now. If the damn ride works, you know, it's a good ride, and it is absolutely bringing people to Galaxy's Edge. But, you know, they thought Star Wars was a bigger draw than it actually was, and they banked on the sequel trilogy, which has turned out to be a complete joke. It really has. You know, what they should have done is do what the Imagineers wanted to do and base it on the original trilogy. And you can see shades of the original trilogy. Like, this should have been Docking Bay 94. The cantina next door, Ogus Cantina, should have been the cantina from A New Hope. You know, where the Rise of the Resistance is, that should have been Endor. And you can see where they planned originally to make it Tatooine and Endor. And then we got the sequel trilogy knockoff Star Wars. And it didn't resonate with people. It wasn't like Harry Potter, where you go to Hogsworth, you go to Hogsmeade, and you get to live the movies. You know, and I'm sorry, it is in a sad state. Disney Star Wars is in a sad state. And again, Rise of Skywalker didn't bomb, but you look at the bigger picture, and it's it's dire. I mean, it really is dire. For what they paid for it, $4 billion, and they ran it into the ground in like 5 years. You know, 5 years is all it took to run Star Wars into the ground. And I'm going to put a link to this too. Now, I don't know these guys. This is Star Wars Explained. They're on YouTube. And I guess they've been throwing shade at anyone who's been critical of Disney's handling of Star Wars for the last, you know, couple of years, defending The Last Jedi and calling people haters. I guess. I don't know. I don't know them. I don't watch the channel. I was barely aware of them, but somebody pointed out to us a couple of months ago that I guess they have us blocked. We're on a blockchain because we probably follow the wrong people. Probably follow some Fandom Menace people or something they don't like. I don't know what the deal is. But it was really interesting to see them put out a very sad video where they basically are admitting everything that other YouTubers have been saying, that Star Wars is in a state of decline. It's fallen. Disney has no plan. They don't have a plan. The only plan Disney had was to try to claw back some of the $4 billion they shelled out for Star Wars. So they shit a sequel trilogy out as fast as they could without a plan, so they could build a theme park expansion that was based on this sequel trilogy that they shit out as fast as they could without a plan, so they could sell toys based on this sequel trilogy that they shit out as fast as they could without a plan. And it's all collapsing. And you know what? Bob Iger has an escape pod. Bob Iger is going to jump ship in 2021, and it's not going to be his problem. It's not going to be his problem anymore. He's not going to be the CEO of Disney when the next Star Wars movie comes out. So whoever else steps into that role is going to have to clean up the mess and try to fix Star Wars. And I don't know if they can at this point, at least not theatrically. I think there's still some hope on Disney Plus, but yeah, Star Wars has become Star Trek, where it doesn't even make sense to release the movies in the theater anymore. You might as well just go straight to TV. And that is sad. So please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.